Everyone to the Monday, August 3rd, 2020 Evanston Rules Committee meeting. This is comprised of all the aldermen and the mayor. As a result of the executive order issued by Governor J.B. Pritzker suspending in-person attendance requirements for public meetings, rule committee members in the city, it all got cut off here, Kimberly. As a result of Governor Pritzker's order, we are meeting virtually. So if I could ask for a motion to meet virtually with a second, and we'll take a roll.
I move that we
Go on, Wilson.
move that we suspend the rules to allow us to conduct the meeting virtually pursuant to the governor's prior directives.
Thank you. Dar Francelno is the assistant for this meeting. Dar, could you please take the roll?
Alderman Fisk.
Here.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Here.
Alderman Nguyen.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
Alderman Simmons.
Here.
Alderman Suffredin.
Here.
Alderman Ravel.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Fleming.
Here.
Mayor Haggerty.
Here. So all 9 aldermen and the mayor is in attendance. We have quorum. We're now going to open it up to public comment. I understand we have 3 public commenters this evening. Each individual will be allowed up to 3 minutes for public comment. The first one is Sean Collier. The second will be Mike Basilko, and the third will be Daisy Shudra. So, Sean, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Haggerty. Good afternoon, Rules Committee. My name is Sean Pett Collier. I am a resident of Ward 6. Thank you for your time. I wanted to address item R4 in your agenda today. First off, I want to give Mayor Haggerty a special thanks for stating in his email to the Attorney General on March 6th that he is committed to providing the transparency that his residents expect. Thank you, Mayor, for including so many emails between yourself and Donald Wilson. I'm curious why, if this concerns the entire Rules Committee, all the other committee members were not included in your back and forth. You and Don Wilson seem to have a long history of taking Clerk Reed to task when it appears that it was not warranted. Why are there so many emails that only include Alderman Wilson? Thank you, Mayor, for including in your provided emails that some of the requested items you demanded from Clerk Reed showed up as corrupted. Thank you for not including any mention of Clerk Reed's responses to your emails, electronic or otherwise, and for not including in the memos that he had been working with Luke Stowe to retrieve those emails or those files. Thank you for including in your emails demands for meetings at which Clerk Reed was not even present. And thank you for not mentioning Miss Kimberly Richardson, who is responsible during those meetings where he and Eduardo, his deputy clerk, are absent. Thank you for not bringing this up until now, during a time when you and the city attorney are attacking Clerk Reed for his policy on guaranteeing us transparency. You spared us this item in the meeting agendas for January, February, and March, which these emails are all dated for, even though you found it egregious enough in March to censure the clerk before the Attorney General. Thank you for your transparency, Mayor. I hope you continue to be a paragon of decency and virtue, and rather than silencing your black city clerk as he gives his defense to your attacks and accusations, as you did during the last city council meeting, you listen with respect and in silence until he has had his say. I hope you do not force him to sign up as a public commenter in order to have any say about your public accusations as you did last time. Thank you for your commitment to transparency, Mayor, and I hope you work just as hard as you have on this to make sure that your constituents have easy access to public city records and public police records. I oppose your handling of agenda item R4. I stand with Clerk Reed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sean Collier. Next up, we got Mike Basilko.
Okay, I can't do my video for some reason. I guess it doesn't matter. So just to go through the items on the agenda, I'm in favor of R2. where staff recommends no increase for city council members because they are public servants. I am greatly in favor of item R3, returning to in-person meetings so we are not cut off and sent back to the waiting room during these virtual meetings, which I do not understand. We've been able to do it on every other meeting. Why this one, I don't know. What's nice about being able to stay involved is that you can use the chat feature. You can use, you can raise your hand if you want to make another comment or something like that. But it's just, it just pushes public comment and citizens further away when you dismiss them into a waiting room. And like the previous speaker, R4, this came out of the blue for me. I just saw it on the agenda. I don't know, I saw all the documentation, but I would have thought this would have been raised earlier. I hope you're gonna give the city clerk an opportunity to defend himself publicly. It just seems like there's some missing pieces here that aren't really conveyed the way they should have been in this document. So I'm hoping you will give him that opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we got Daisy Shedra.
Hi all. Last week's city council meeting was atrocious to watch due to the racist and unprofessional treatment of Clerk Reed by both Mayor Haggerty and Alderman Wilson. The clerk's policy related to releasing EPD use of force complaints is in line with the law and the public interest of the Evanstonians who democratically elected him. The mayor tried to sabotage both the character of Reed and the legality of this policy, which is outlined in the responsibilities and duties of Evanston's city clerk. In addition, his plan is legally verified by Matt Topic, one of the leading attorneys in Illinois, who is also responsible for the release of the Laquan McDonald tapes. In addition, Alderman Wilson's attacks of the city clerk's hiring practices were extremely unprofessional and rude. I am truly embarrassed to be from a city where a white alderman and mayor think it's okay to treat a black democratically elected official with the disrespect founded on unbased claims that you guys showed last week. In addition, the comments Sean brought up only further articulate the racism that's going on behind closed doors in this city that we love to call Heavenston. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisy. Is that it for public comment? Kimberly, I want to make sure there's nobody else that signed up.
That is it, Mayor.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move to item 3, which is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 15th, 2020 of the Rules Committee meeting. Would anyone like to move a motion?
Move approval.
Your second? All right, any discussion of the minutes? All right, seeing none, Dar, could you please take the roll on item 3?
Alderman Fisk,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite, Alderman Braithwaite,
You're muted, Peter, but he was looking.
Yep, I'm an aye.
okay, Alderman Nguyen, thank you.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin,
Aye.
Alderman Ravel,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Mayor Haggerty.
Aye. All right, that was RM1. The minutes pass 10-0. We're now going to move to items for discussion. We've got R1. Alderman Rainey, could you move R1?
R1, let's see, what is R1? Nominate an alderman for the 911 Emergency Telephone Systems Board. Our staff is looking for a nomination from the Rules Committee to appoint an alderman to the 911 Telephone Emergency Services Board. I move that we do this.
Second.
All right. Any volunteers? Alderman Braithwaite.
I guess I want to start with a question, and I probably skipped over it in the packet. Can you, or someone who has served on that committee, talked about when the meetings are and how meetings frequency and time? I'm interested because I've never served on that committee, so I just want to hear a little bit more. Anyone?
Alderman Nguyen,
Thank you.
and then we'll go to Alderman Rainey.
Yes. Hi, Alderman Braithwaite. I am the member of the city council that's stepping down from the 911 committee because of time constraints, but it's not overly burdensome at all. It meets quarterly if necessary. I think it's an interesting committee to be on because there are a lot of there's a lot of technology changes that we're going through in order to bring us all, all of our systems to be connected. It's a very light load, I would say, a very light load to be a member of the city, of the committee, but it is interesting. So
Yeah.
Nevertheless, given all of the other committees that I serve on, I'm leaving it because I do need another evening. Remarkable to be free. So.
And what evening do you meet, Alderman Nguyen?
It's I think it's quarterly quarterly, and it's on a Thursday.
Okay.
I may have that
Thank you.
wrong.
Alderman Rainey, and then we'll go to Alderman Rusin.
I served on the 911 committee before it was established and before there was a 911 line for the city. And it was an amazing experience. And I was part of the team that helped draw up the specifications for making the calls. And I went around to many, many communities that either had a 911 system or were thinking about it. And I think now would be a fascinating time to be on the committee. And I would encourage Alderman Braithwaite because of all the changes that are being demanded of us. And Alderman Ravel and I talked about this today. The calls that come into the 911 committee, to the 911 operators vary from, does anybody know where my dog is? To there's a person getting ready to kill me. So we're going to have to, if from what I read on the Human Services Committee, have to find a way to distinguish between the kind of calls the 911 committee, the 911 operators are hearing. And I find that a fascinating thing to for them to distinguish between who should, what calls should we send out a police officer on and what calls should we not? And I think the heroes of this community are the 911 officers who are taking those calls. It is a tremendous responsibility. And if you've never sat, regardless of what committees you're on, if you've never sat in the 911 dispatch center, you need to do that and hear what goes on in there and see the videos and who's watching what and what's going on in this town. It's an amazing experience, and I encourage you, Peter, to join that committee. I nominate Peter Braithwaite.
I think there are a few more comments to go, but thank you, Alderman Rainey, for the insight.
Not to mention the things you learn about technology and the cost of it.
Yeah.
Alderman
Yep.
Alderman Rusin.
Thank you. So Alderman Rainey's comments were helpful. I heard Alderman Nguyen mostly talk about like operations and technology. So I would be interested if there is discussion on, as Alderman Rainey said, the types of calls that are coming in. I've been in the 911 center and I've seen how awesome it is. But especially right now, as we're looking at defunding and ways that we can maybe have other services to respond to various 911 calls. I'm curious how much of that is discussed on this committee, like the types of calls and if there are any discussions on that committee. I guess Alderman Nguyen, you were the last to be on that committee. Is that discussed at all, or is it more on the technology?
Well, I'm one of two aldermen who are on the committee. Alderman Suffredin is the other alderman that's part of the committee. No, right now, Alderman Bruce Simmons, the 2 years I've served on it, the 3 years I've served on it, mostly it's been the technology side in terms of how we are going about updating our technology and ensuring that we are complying with the latest standards for the state of Illinois. So we have not discussed the types of calls. So Alderman Rainey was on the committee when it was the formation of earlier than I was, and so it had a somewhat different at that time. But Alderman Suffredin can share too.
Alderman Suffredin.
So it's a committee that meets quarterly, generally discusses technology under the direction of Perry Polinsky. And looking through, you got about a 50-50 chance that a meeting will be canceled with plenty of it. So if anybody's available 4 Thursdays a year and flexible, I encourage you to participate in this committee.
Alderman Russo.
I'm going to volunteer. It's quarterly. I think that it's a good time to be more educated on the process. And I don't know, I'm going to second Alderman Rainey's nomination for Alderman Braithwaite as well. So I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm definitely going to volunteer.
Yep. Do it together. Tom, have you had your full, or?
I'm happy to rotate off of this committee. I'm excited that there's fresh eyes looking at these important issues. And if it's appropriate, I'm willing to resign my position from the Emergency Telephone Services Board if that is something that is okay to do.
I think you have your 2 nominees.
All right. I mean, on our agenda, we only had one, but I think we could probably, with Kimberly or somebody tells me, or Kelly Gandersky, I think, is on here, tells me we can't just nominate both of you tonight. We go ahead and do that. Nick Cummins is with us from the Law Department. Nick, is there any problem with us just nominating both Alderman Ruth Simmons and Braithwaite tonight and accepting Alderman Suffredin's stepping down from the committee?
Yeah, if one of the aldermen would be filling in for the remainder of his term, if his term is as a specific time. So one of them would be filling in the remainder of his term, while the other would be fulfilling a full term that Alderman Nguyen is vacated.
Okay. All right. So,
I'll take the balance of Alderman Suffredin's term.
So, Mayor, I nominate Alderman Ruth Simmons, if that's appropriate, to step in and fulfill the remainder of Alderman Suffredin's term.
Second.
I was just going to second it.
all right. Somebody want to nominate Peter?
Peter's
I
been
think Alderman Rainey.
Already. All right. All right. So Peter's been, okay, let's go ahead. We've got 2 nominees then, Alderman Ruth Simmons and Alderman Braithwaite. This is for the 911 Emergency Telephone System Board. Dar, can you please take the roll?
Alderman Fisk,
Aye.
Alderman Braithwaite,
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Ruth Simmons,
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin,
Aye.
Alderman Revelle,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey,
Aye.
Alderman Fleming,
Aye.
Mayor Haggerty.
Aye. All right, 10-0 votes. Alderman Braithwaite and Alderman Ruth Simmons are new members now of the 911.
Mayor?
Yes.
Hi, Mayor. This is Kimberly. Just to remind our elected officials, we're still looking for a vacant position on that committee. So if they know of anyone who might be interested in applying for that role, we would greatly appreciate individuals applying because we still have a resident vacancy.
A resident vacancy on 911. All right. Excellent. Thank you for letting us know that, Kimberly, and congratulations to the 2 new aldermen on there. let's see, Alderman Rainey, could you
Ooh.
move for discussion R2?
R2. I'm off the agenda right now. R2 is proposed compensation for the 11 elected officials of the city of Evanston. Staff is looking for directions from the city council regarding compensation committee report. I move approval, and it should be pointed out that this is for the council and mayor and city clerk that gets elected in the April election, not for this current sitting alderman.
And this is,
so I move approval.
And this is actually, Alderman, just for discussion only. We're going to give some direction, and then it'll end up on the city council agenda.
It'll go to the city council, correct?
Is that a second, Alderman Braithwaite?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this is items opened up for discussion. So Alderman, Kimberly Richardson, were you the liaison to this compensation committee?
I was not I did participate, Mayor, was not the technically.
Do you want to just for the viewers and folks at home that didn't read the packet, just explain what the recommendations were? I can't if you want.
Sure, Mayor. Let me just give 1 second. Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Rainey, you said something?
No, I was going to say if you can't find it, I
have it. I have it. Sorry. I just haven't looked at it in quite a couple weeks. So Mayor Haggerty, members of the commission or members of the Rules Committee. So again, there was a conversation around compensation committee met for several weeks to go over what they would like to see moving forward as a recommendation to the compensation package for the city council who will be elected in 2021. They're saying in the compensation committee, which are made up of residents, made this recommendation that in 2021 and 2022, there should be no increase. It should remain at the same rate it is today. And compensation for years 2023 and 2024 would increase at the same percentage rate as a non-union employee of the city. Each elected official will be offered full 100% coverage for any health insurance plan for themselves only. They have the option to accept or deny such coverage and add additional coverage for their spouse and or family at their own expense.
Thank you, Kimberly. So the big change is right now any of us, depending upon our life situation, can either get a single health insurance plan or could get a family plan. Obviously, the family plan costs the city more than a single plan. There's been concern expressed to the committee and just in general that means that some aldermen, if you factor in the cost of health insurance, are compensated greater than others who may just have a single plan. So what the committee was trying to do in the report that they issued and the recommendation that they issued was treating all, alderman, mayor, clerk, the same in terms of health insurance and saying everybody gets a single plan. And if you want to upgrade because you have a family or you have a spouse, you can do that, but it's at your own expense. So this is open for discussion. Alderman Fleming.
I have two questions. Kimberly, hoping you can answer this one. So regarding the health insurance plan, how do we treat all of our other staff members? So if I'm, police, fire, whatever, and I have, only myself maybe on the plan versus my counterparts who has, 3 or 4 children, do they pay the same way for the health insurance?
No, so it's tiered based on being single, one or single plus one or family. And so it depends on what plan you ask for. So we right now currently have 3 plans. So you have HMO, which of course is the most cheapest plan. And then you have PPO 1 and PPO Advantage, I believe. I have to pull, but it's 3 different plans. And for each plan, there's tiered payments. So depending on which plan you choose or which family or single plus one you select, then your rate will be that amount that you'll pay. But we all pay the same amount as to the percentage of that premium.
So we as council are in the same plan tier, whatever we choose, as the rest of our staff.
Correct. Currently, that's correct.
Okay. So my issue with this, and it's, the pay is what it is. I think, if I remember correctly, this was brought up last time when I was thinking of being a candidate, is the job is very demanding. So I realize we're all here part-time. I realize everyone's doing this for the love of the job, not for the paycheck, because it is very small. And I know we compare ourselves to other cities, but I don't know if other cities have the same high touch that Evanston seems to have. That said, the job is already probably not attractive to many people, given the low salary, and that's a huge issue when we think about trying to be representative. And then if you think of the benefits being, according to this new plan, more expensive basically for someone who has a family that they want to put on the coverage. I think we're just essentially here limiting the number of people who we're going to see apply for this or run for this position, because the benefits might be really a make or break for someone. I take the city benefits, but I could just as easily take my husband's benefits at his job. But if we're looking at maybe a single parent or some other configuration, it might actually be less expensive for them to, take the city benefits, which is something they will consider when they're looking at the salary for this job as well. I know we've had some people over the years come and say we're paid too much, but I also would probably guess that some of those people feel like we're not doing enough. So I'm not really sure where the citizen base would like us to fall. But I am concerned about what this does for others who really having the option to have pretty affordable benefits, and you are paying in some. So I want to make that clear. I have a husband and 3 kids on the benefit plan. I am paying in some. It's not as if my benefits are free. But taking that away, I think we really just look at limiting the representatives that we might have run for city council, and that really concerns me. And then also, it doesn't fall in line with how we treat any other staff. So I understand the idea of having this be an equity issue and us kind of making the same, and me not necessarily making more because I have family benefits, but it's not the way we treat any other member of our staff. So if we have one fireman who has no siblings no dependents, and a fireman who has, 5 dependents, we don't penalize him per se and make him pay more because he's taken our insurance. We just fit him in the tiers and he pays accordingly. So I don't support it for that reason.
Alderman Rainey and then Braithwaite.
Well, I was the person who brought up the equity issue, and there is no way you can look at the compensation of aldermen when you include benefits as a compensation and see that some aldermen are receiving $17,000 a year more than other aldermen. And I raised that issue, and I found it very unfair. And we all work our fingers to the bone, and I don't care what anybody says. In my world, this is not a part-time job, but that doesn't matter. We are different from city employees. We are elected officials, and the legislature determines our salary. They determine how we're paid, and they say that our pay is determined for 4 years by this recommending body to the council. That's how the thing goes. So I begged the compensation committee not to reduce the family benefit. I said, that's not why I'm here. How is it fair that what you do when I'm asking for equity here is that you drag everybody down to the lowest point, as opposed to giving those of us who are single, who are not taking additional dollars out of the fund, just give us a little more to make us not feel like we're getting $17,000 less than many of you. That would be the way to make it equitable. Or to give us all a little raise and, say that you can do whatever you want with the money. Instead, they pulled everybody down, and I found that very unfortunate. And just so you all know, the compensation committee did not think we were all doing full-time work or that it was a hard job. One person said on the committee, oh, all they have to do is go to committee meetings. All the rest of that stuff they do is just stuff they want to do. They don't have to do that. So our job is not fully understood by the people in our community. Not all of them. Some of them, of course, know, especially the people we live with. If you have a spouse or a partner, they know what's going on in your life. But so that I found very unfortunate, and believe me, that was not how I felt that any group looking for fairness would treat this. But they claimed that because of COVID and the budget problems the city was in, that it was important to take money from you as opposed to boost up those who were at the bottom of the barrel. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Braithwaite, then Alderman Simmons.
Sure. A lot of good comments. I'm not sure if I can add anything, but I will share something that everyone on City Council, as well as spouses, family members, and former aldermen, to the public, that this is a very demanding responsibility. Our meetings probably take up maybe 10% of our time a week. It's the phone calls, emails, going to the grocery store, wherever we shop or walk in Evanston, we're on the clock. So to those who don't think that this is more than a half-time job, I am more than happy to lend you my phone for one day and access to my email and have at it, just to get an understanding. I do think, and I agree with Alderman Fleming, that to reduce any form of our compensation packet it will have an impact on the diversity of our council. You're basically saying you'd either have to be retired or have some other streams of income to make up the difference. So I would agree, we don't do it for the money, but for the love of our city. And I hope that my other peers reject the recommendations and at the very least keep the compensation package in place. And I would even put forth a recommendation, if there was enough support, to increase the salary for any future person that would come behind any one of us to make it equal to whatever our normal city staff is being paid or compensated during the next budget season. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Alderman Simmons.
Thank you. Just agreeing with actually all of the comments, and thank you, Alderman Braithwaite, for giving a bit more background on, anyone that thinks the time that we spend in a meeting is the time that we spend alderman. So I know that it takes hours just to prepare to even be in a meeting, and the amount of follow-up. So to reduce the overall compensation package, to Alderman Fleming's point, a point that I have made since I've been here, that we will have a council that will not reflect the community. And that's why, Mayor Haggerty, I am really kind of anal about the committee and commission appointments, because even on this committee, from what I believe, you have 3 members at large that have 6-figure incomes and partners at home and access to other ways to get benefits for their families. And so when you have those perspectives weighing in on making policy recommendations, it's short-sighted. So I think that we should keep, and I, for one, am like Alderman Rainey. I'm single, had a household. I only took coverage for myself and no one else in my family, not my children. So I didn't get the additional $17,000, but I certainly would want to see an opportunity for lower and moderate income single parents and everyone in this community that has something that they can share on the city council, allow them an opportunity, because it's certainly not a living wage. If you're running for alderman, you definitely are going to have a job in addition to this to be able to sustain your family. So my hope is that the insurance package stays as it is. It's definitely an asset. And then just overall, I just don't understand. I mean, I get that it's comparable to other cities, but even the fact that, the aldermen are the policymakers and, have committees. I've lost count of how many committees that I've served on and chaired. And in other services that we do in the community. The mayor makes more, the city clerk has a living wage and more benefits, like all of it. We don't have access to a personal staff person. We don't have access to a working space or office. You know, we have all these limitations. And then for the aldermen to be reduced down to the absolute bottom of the pay scale and to have the responsibility to manage and lead the city, just the whole sort of government structure doesn't make that much sense to me. So I just want to say, I hope that we can support keeping the insurance, and I would be in support of increasing compensation as well. That's it.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Fisk, and then Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize if I've got a dog barking here in a minute. I don't want to lose sight of one point that the Compensation Committee did bring up, and that is to restate that this position has always been a position of public service, not a job, not viewed as a job, but viewed as a way for people who are serving as elected officials to give back to the community, with the exception, of course, of the city clerk, who is getting a living wage. You might not agree with that, but it is a living wage as far as our structure is concerned. I think, especially in these times, it's important to remind people that we are public servants, that we're not doing this for the money. We're not, even though I absolutely agree with everyone, this is a full-time job. There's no question about it. If you do this job correctly and you're looking out for the best interests of your ward, you can be working absolutely full-time and on weekends and evenings and at all other times. So again, I just want to go back to public service, and I support keeping things the same. I am not interested in raising the salary or benefits for us. I do think it's fine to keep the health insurance the way it is. I think that's fair to everyone.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Wilson and Alderman Nguyen.
Thank you. And I think probably most of the points have been covered. I appreciate those comments. And I can't tell you how many calls I'm sure we all get, but I get call after call from people who, want to speak to my assistant or want to come to my office and see my staff. And of course, we have no office, we have no staff. And, the city phone number goes to this thing right here. So that's the office. I would like to see, and I'll just to be totally transparent, I have the family coverage as well. I'd like to see that remain the same. And I think generally the compensation should remain the same. I am open to the idea, though, if an alderman is not choosing the family coverage for some additional stipend, because the city is otherwise saving a significant amount of money by not paying for that family coverage. So that's, I guess, my proffer is if we generally keep it the same, but consider an additional stipend if one chooses not to take the family coverage.
All right. Thank you, Alderman.
Second that, Alderman Wilson. If that's something that we can formally add to the reference going back to staff. So I think we would probably have to vote on that. Or I would prefer, to make sure that it sticks.
I think we're just given direction and it's supposed to come back to council. Is that how it's supposed to work?
Correct, but I think
if something like that.
If there's a general consensus of this group that you'd like to go back to what Alderman Rainey had suggested, then that needs to be sort of felt here that there's a general consensus, and then staff will write that up and bring that to us. So let's go to Alderman Nguyen, and then we can come back to that suggestion.
Can I guess ask on a subject, Alderman Nguyen, my apologies. Do you mind if I ask a follow-up question to Alderman Wilson's statement? Thank you. Thank you for the courtesy. So Alderman Wilson, I guess if we were to play this out, if there was an alderman for whatever reason who chose not to accept any insurance benefit, how would that play out in your mind, or Alderman Rainey, since you're in agreement on the subject matter?
So I guess my answer to that is I think that the additional stipend would only come into play for someone who chose no family coverage, because it's two different things. There's the individual coverage, and if you're a human being who's elected, then you can get that benefit. That's something that's offered to you. But the family coverage is something in addition to that it's not equally needed. So different aldermen might have different circumstances, and there are differing needs. So that's kind of why I broke that out. So in other words, if you choose not to have the family coverage, you get an additional stipend. Otherwise, you're just getting the amount with the family coverage.
So the value of the family insurance is the same, whether you're using it or you're not using it, is what you're recommending, just for clarity.
So if you're not taking the family coverage, you would get basically additional stipend. Since you're not,
okay, that keeps it clean. I get it.
Right, regardless of whether you have other family or not. Right.
Okay.
Alderman, I'm going to ask Alderman, if it's okay, Alderman Nguyen, can I just have Alderman Rainey chime in on that?
Sure. I'd like to hear what Alderman Rainey's response is too.
Yeah.
It has never been my thinking when I made the recommendation to the compensation committee that those who take single coverage because they are literally being discriminated because they don't have a family, that the $17,000 be provided as a stipend. My concern is that something be considered, some figure, but I'm not looking for that entire amount, but some kind of acknowledgement that we are not taking family coverage and the only reason we're not, mind you, is because we're either not married, we don't have children, or we don't have a spouse. I mean, because we're single. That's why we're not getting that family coverage. That's why. So that is an unfair advantage for those who have a family, and that it shouldn't be that way. So there should be some kind of an additional stipend, but I'm not saying it should be $17,000. That would be outrageous in my mind. But some acknowledgement that we are not taking family coverage. Financial acknowledgement.
Some financial acknowledgement. Got it. Okay.
Yes, financial, not a pat on the back.
I would give you acknowledgement if that's all you want. All right.
Okay.
Alderman Nguyen.
Well, I think that's an interesting idea that Alderman Wilson raised. I agree with a number of the comments here. But I don't, Alderman Rainey, with all due respect, I don't see that this is uneven. It's a benefit, and benefits are not always calculated in dollars. I mean, it means that actually everyone who wants to have health insurance, who's on the city council, has access to health insurance, no matter what size family you come from. So in my mind, it's not unequal treatment. It actually is equal treatment because everyone has access to the health insurance that they might need. So, but I do support a stipend because someone who is just using single coverage is saving the city some money. So I would support that. But I also wanted to really emphasize that I completely agree with Alderman Fleming and Alderman Ruth Simmons that I think that we would end up with a city council that looks actually a lot like Oak Park, which is almost all retirees, and some other communities like that, where people have, it's really critically important that we continue to have a spectrum of ages and people who have children in our schools and experiences on the city council. And it is not a part-time job. And I think an awful lot of people who do know us know that that's the case, because when they call you on a Sunday at 1 p.m. and you pick up the phone, they say, "Oh, I thought I was going to go to your voicemail." And or as Alderman Wilson, I've been addressed as my staff more times than I can count, and I've been asked if my staff can forward me all of the information about this or that. We all know that. So I look at it this way in the sense that, the job is much bigger than part-time. And over the years, we've had many council members who are sole proprietors. Either they are sole proprietors as a law in law practice, or they own their own business, and so they are providing frequently their own health insurance. And in order for them to provide the health insurance that they would need for their family, if they had to pay the extra, they can't do the job as well as any other alderman. So who doesn't have that need? So I do think this keeps the playing field level, but I agree with Alderman Rainey that I think a stipend would be appropriate, because anyone who opts in that direction is saving the city money. But we need to make sure our council stays as broadly encompassing of the community as possible.
Alderman Rainey.
I am 1,000% in favor of aldermen maintaining their family coverage. I was shocked when the compensation committee took it away. And I argued up till the last point in the last meeting that it should happen. So I agree with you. What I am saying should not in any way take away from you. I am just saying you cannot look at that benefit and not say that extra 17,000 or 14,000 in some cases is not additional compensation, because if you were not getting it, you would have to be going into your pocket. So it is real money. So that I want to make clear to you. You all, with the exception of Alderman Ravel, who perhaps has different circumstances than others, you all are, it is different. You are being compensated, whether you call it a benefit or not, to an extent beyond what some of us are being compensated for. That's period. And that's a fact. You cannot deny that is not money.
Mayor, do you feel that you have enough coal? Alderman Simmons, my apologies. Hawkins.
Yeah, well, we go Alderman Simmons and then Clerk Reed, I think.
Really nothing new, but I mean, to Alderman Rainey's point, like, we have to look at it. I get Alderman Nguyen that it is a benefit, but it certainly is compensation, because as Alderman Fleming said, she could easily take her husband's package. Now that would, not taking her husband's package, possibly he would be paying into it. So that's still more money into their household. So it is compensation. And it seems like we have the support to give staff direction that we at least keep family coverage. So with that, just want to say, I hope that we move forward with that for future candidates.
I agree.
Yep. And that was all I was going to say, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to, by a nod, say that we have the consensus to keep the family insurance. And Alderman Rainey, I think you have more support this going into next term than you ever had. So I hope that if we have to take it to vote, that it will pass. I think it's a great idea.
Well, I would like to make an amendment that there be some form, and I perhaps staff could do this so that you all would not feel politically challenged, that staff recommend a stipend for those of us who are receiving single coverage and not getting the additional $14,000 to $17,000 as aldermen, and who we should all be equal to some extent, or at least acknowledged as being equal to some extent financially.
And Alderman Rainey, I agree with you. I think we should have staff come up with the number and send it to the
I
city.
would accept that. I would accept that, yeah.
All right.
Can I have point of clarification?
I suggested it.
Yes, support.
Can I have a point of clarification? So so we're speaking to the benefit, but as to the pay increase, are we leaving it as is, as they have they recommend as the 0 for the first 2 years, and then the same increase GWI to the last 2 years?
Nobody's really spoken about that or against that, but let's go with Alderman. We got a lot. Let me go with Clerk Reed, because he's had his hand up for a bit. Clerk Reed, then Alderman Simmons, then Alderman Brady.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to a few points. I attended, along with Alderman Rainey, a few of the compensation committee meetings, and I also advocated for an increase in the pay for the aldermen because, as Alderman Ruth Simmons and Alderman Braithwaite and Fleming and others mentioned, that we want, and Alderman Nguyen as well, we want to make sure that we create a council that is as diverse as possible, diverse economically, racially, whatever else you'll have. And so I think by making sure that we compensate aldermen with enough to ensure that is key to that. I do want to note that just having gone through some of our historical records, just to throw out there that there have been different models that aldermen have been paid by over the course of Evanston's history. And one of them was aldermen received a per diem. So every time you had a council meeting or a committee meeting, you got paid for that. And maybe that's a fair way for certain aldermen who are maybe serving on more committees than others to be fairly compensated for the time that they spend serving on various committees. That's just an idea based on some records that we have in the city. But the main point I want to make here is that I do not, as far as process goes, I believe that that staff shouldn't be making the recommendations. I think as far as process, I think the best process would be that it goes back to that committee with the recommendations from council. That committee directs and then brings it back to council. That way it's the residents that elect us choosing the salaries for the elected officials as opposed to staff who are directly accountable to us, the elected officials.
Thank you, Clerk Reed. Alderman, I lost track. Alderman Braithwaite, then Ruth Simmons.
Not much to add. I do think the committee's work is done. I don't have a problem, and I'll speak for the group. We work very hard. The people who understand what we do will be the first to say, I would never do that for what you guys get paid. And I think it's the critics and those who don't walk in our shoes who just have no idea. So I don't have a problem telling the city council, the Evanston's of residents, I work very hard in this position because I love this town, and I would support staff coming back with a recommendation to increase the current salary, which I'll speak, I think, what is it, maybe $700 a month is what I get paid for the hours. I'll do the math, and I don't know what that works out to be in terms of the hourly wage, but point being, I think if we move into next budget, my recommendation would be to have the percentage of the, you want to call it salary, I can't say it without laughing, to increase it along with whatever our normal staff budget, 2-3%. Kim, what is our normal staff increase? I just want to make sure that I'm using the right percentage.
So it's a GWI. Well, we've been zeros for a couple of years. This is the first year we've not been zero. So the number for current year is, I want to say it was 3 point something. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll pull it up.
Right. I thank you for that clarification. That's what I was looking for, Kim. So whatever you said the GWI, is that the right terminology? That it's consistent with that is what I would propose to the make a referral to our staff. So if it's zero for staff, then it's zero. If it goes up, it goes up.
So just so you're aware, typically the city council from the current council, you have a set dollar amount. So I guess the question is, you usually typically voting for that set dollar, and then that dollar is what's consistent for the 4 years. There is no increases. So city council did not have an increase since the last compensation recommendation 5 years ago, or now 4 years ago. So the dollar amount typically you're voting and giving a dollar amount and saying this is how much we're going to, provide city council.
Not a percentage.
It's not.
Okay.
It's never increasing.
All right, Alderman Ruth Simmons.
So this isn't compensation, but I guess it goes into the expense of the automatic budget. And this is a referral, just in terms of our ability to even communicate with our neighbors. I think we only get the one postcard a year. I would like to see if that budget could be increased, that we could get at least one quarterly. So I only kind of found out about that late in the game. But particularly having wards that have large senior populations like I do, that one mailing could be really valuable. So I used my one this year for COVID and census combined, but there are other messages throughout the year that are important. So if we could increase that budget, I think that would be a referral separate from this. But I just want to have staff. I don't know if we talk about that during the budget season, but I want to throw that out there since we're talking about resources and the ability for us to do a fine job in this role as alderman.
I'd support that.
All right, so let's put that down for the budget season and all of that. Alderman Wilson?
Thanks. While I appreciate having the staff put something together, I do think that we should actually kind of just take on that calculation on our own and not put the staff to that task. So in other words, sometime between now and when we come back to entertain it at the council, just collectively think about, what we each think that number should be between whatever it was, say 0 and I think 14 or 17. So some number in there, as opposed to asking the staff to kind of come up with that. I think that's not totally fair to them, but I think that we as a group could probably fairly come up with a number in there and work that through at the next meeting, at the council meeting.
Mr. Mayor?
Give me 1 second, Nick. I would like staff to run the projections of it, though. Like, what's the additional cost to the city? I mean, the compensation.
Sure, yeah, so we know what the number is.
And said, if you do this, if you take our recommendation, you're going to save $440,000 over the next 4 years or something. And if we're going to increase or put that stipend in place, we need to understand what the financial implication is to the city. I also have a question about whether there would be a legal implication if we said, okay, benefits have a value. We're going to give a stipend to aldermen that aren't taking the family plan. Maybe it's not that complete delta, that complete difference, but something else. Do we open the door then for employees to say, well, why are we not treated similarly? Because there's many employees that only have a single plan and others that have, the family plan. The same basis that we're all talking about applies to them too. I mean, the person that has the family plan at the end of the day is getting more compensation, but we don't treat them. We don't do a markup or anything like that for those that are single. So let's go to Nick and then Alderman Rainey and then Alderman Braithwaite.
Mr. Mayor, I can wait until the rest of the council's had an opportunity for discussion.
Thank you. So let's go Alderman Rainey and then Braithwaite.
Well, first of all, some employees getting the single plan are making $100,000 plus a year, plus they're eligible for a pension, plus they get paid vacation, sick days, et cetera, et cetera. So I would hope they wouldn't nitpick on aldermen who are making $15,000. Secondly, those of us who are single may not be reelected, and you may have another 2 people getting the $30,000 benefit package. So we're talking about next year. We're not talking about this year. So I don't think you should worry about 2 possible benefits of maybe $5,000 a year when you might have 2 more aldermen who are receiving full benefits for family at the rate of 30. I think it comes out to $32,000 a year. So vote for me. I'm cheap.
Alderman Braithwaite.
A point of information regarding the difference between what we do and our other part-time staff. I don't know of any part-time staff that's salaried. So that would, if anyone wanted to correct me, I would love to get that insight. But I think for our average part-time staff and most part-time staff, they're paid hourly. And whereas with us, I mean, start the meter tonight and track me for the rest of the week. I'm going to go over, those part-time hours, and I'm not going to see any compensation nor any other my peers. So I don't know if now is the time to finish hashing out that conversation, or if you want to come back to it during budget season, Mr. Mayor, Alderman Wilson. But I do think it's something that's important to have, particularly because just looking at the diversity now on the city council, this is the best that I've seen in 10 years. And I don't know what it's going to look like down the line when you take into consideration the impact that COVID has had on all of our households across town, let alone the people of color. So I think it's definitely not enough to raise a family. I think we all can agree on that if you're the sole proprietor, but anything that we can do. And we do work long hours, and we're called to know a lot about our local government. I think it's important that we prioritize that, especially in this upcoming election season.
Alderman Brewson.
This is another probably budget discussion, but like other places, the alderman has a budget that they can do things to lead and manage with. A CRM, access to a CRM would actually be helpful since we don't have a staff and we have such high volumes of call and actions and follow-up needed. So I know early on coming into this role, I asked if we had it. Salesforce is a good one. I don't know if there is a particular, what are you doing, Peter?
I'm joking. I say that's my CRM. That's my CRM staff.
If we had access to an actual, right, I got it. But if we could get some sort of a group like automatic account for those that want to opt into using that for, because it's tough to remember everything, follow up, track what you're doing. We don't have staff support like the mayor has staff support. So that would be something I think would be helpful for future aldermen to manage what they're doing. Some aldermen have more going on than others. There's seasonal stuff, there's emergencies that come up. I know that I use it. We probably all do in our professional lives, but if we could add that to the budget as well.
Kimberly's got that. Alderman Fleming.
So this, I guess, goes with Alderman Bruce Simmons' referral. Kimberly, do we have that? Is it, Ms. Richardson, is it called Asana? Yes.
Yes.
So, and I'm not a tech person, but that might be what Alderman Bruce Simmons is talking about. It's kind of a project management system online, right? Yeah. I used it for a few minutes, but I kind of stumbled upon it, I think, in talking to a staff who was using it, and then I think Wally eventually told me about it, but I don't really utilize it. But to the point of the postcards, I also was late in knowing that was even a thing. And so part of, I think, what I would love to see as a referral is, I don't know if we have money for a staff, because that is an issue. Even in office space, I think I've asked for this for Mr. Bobkovitz for years, right? Like, you go meet someone, you have to pay for coffee, you're paying for parking, all those things to meet a constituent. So even having an office space at City Hall or community center would be helpful, because then it cuts down on the cost. You can do several things at one time. I know when I used to come to City Hall more, I was kind of walking around with my backpack looking for an unlocked room to use. So even having a space that we could use for some set time would be nice. And then, the email. So we get one email a month, but that still, when we're communicating a lot, isn't enough. So even if we could look at doing 2 emails a month would be helpful. Just all the ways in which we could be supported to do a better job, since people probably make the assumption we have access to all these things already. And in terms of the stipend, I'm fine with that. I don't know what that would be, so I'm happy to have staff or the compensation committee come up with that. And I think, as Alderman Rainey said, we don't know what the next council looks like, so it might be something we set in motion that we don't even use. But I do think it's worth honoring the savings that people are providing to the city by only taking the single insurance without penalizing people who do need the health care. So I think that's kind of that's something that I think is a fair compromise, and that hopefully our citizen base could understand, given the amount of work that we do. And I think the amount of work that's expected from us as well. And as Alderman Rainey said, I have the same concern that the mayor has regarding just the legality of all of our other staff. But I would hope that, again, they can respect and understand that, we are probably the lowest paid staff. And so that would be something that we can do. And then to Alderman Fisk's point that she's shaking her hand, it is public service. And I do think we all know that, whether people think we work enough or not enough, it definitely is public service. I know the other elected bodies make no money, and I'm not saying that that's right or we're better than them or anything like that. But this is public service. No one is doing this, for the money and for the fame and all the other things that people might think we're getting out of this. But I think to be compensated something for your service is still okay.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you. Well, I guess I feel uncomfortable making rules about compensating us for the health insurance in a different plan or a different strategy than our employees. So I'm going to ask the Kimberly if we can get just a spreadsheet on the compensation for health. Again, it's here somewhere. I just don't know where it is. But I'd like to take a look at that. We're not that special. That's the thing. I guess that we work really hard and we work all the time, and we have a lot of knowledge, and we do, I think, an incredible job of keeping in touch with our constituents and trying to work through issues and doing the right thing and communicating and all of that. But I think it's really important that, at least to me, it's important that I not set myself above my constituents or the employees of the city. I don't want to say to another employee, I expect you to understand, because I'm only making X number of dollars a month, that therefore I am going to be entitled to this, additional compensation. I just don't feel comfortable with that. So it's not something that I would support. I feel strongly, again, about the public service aspect of it, that you don't come into this with the expectation of compensation. And now I am sympathetic or empathetic to the concept that maybe we could encourage more people to come in if there were better compensation, but I would not choose to do that. And I understand that I could opt out of that if I wished. So that's okay with me. But I'm not feeling that this is anything other than looking unfair. And I personally don't want to do that. I'm not, the rest of you can do what you want, but it doesn't sit well with me.
Alderman Reese Simmons, then Alderman Braithwaite.
Yeah, so the compensation piece and unfair, and let's really call this what it is, because I know that we are paid equivalent to probably a few dollars an hour. So it's not compensation, it's a stipend. Much of it is passed along to nonprofits in town when we go to their galas and we give donations, and we pay for this, and we can't take coffee. And so it is really a stipend that allows us to be able to serve. There's no wealth building model here. We're not earning any money. It's all mostly being shared back into the community, being conscious and shopping local, eating out at local restaurants more than we normally would to encourage our residents. We don't have a budget or a per diem for that. So if we were going to, look at maybe not more compensation, but that's something that I meant to bring up, even a budget for these things, since we can't accept tickets, but we want to support our nonprofits, maybe there should be a budget set aside if we want to go to a, annual gala or be present at an event where the ticket prices are as much as $200. They've been more before. I would say the average price in town is $150, and we can't submit receipts for reimbursement for that. So, you're talking about compensation and not being fair, and we're not special. We certainly are special. We've been elected by the city to govern and create laws and policy. And at a minimum, we should be able to do it comfortably and with a stipend that allows us to be able to serve in the way that the residents expect us. If you're not there, then that's noted, and that's a statement that you're not present. And sometimes you can't be present because you just can't afford to go to all of these different events. So I just want to be careful that we don't, talk about this as if we're getting over on the people based on the work that we do and the expectations of the residents in Evanston. We certainly should be being compensated.
Thank you. Alderman Braithwaite, did you have something?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to thank Alderman Simmons and to my peers as well as the public who are listening now and will replay this later. This is a real conversation, particularly as we go into election season. And depending on your family background, who you're married to, what you do during the day will impact and has an impact how we do this job. I have 4 kids in the last 10 years that have transitioned to college. And when I'm not working my full-time job and my family, this is what I do. And I would tell you that I do it well based on my years on council. And I do think if it's important to have people who look like me, and I work for an employer, I don't run my own business. I don't have a family wealth to draw on. Like, this is a sacrifice as well as sacrifice to my family. I do think my opinion and my experiences and the people that I know in town, my presence here on city council matters. And if it's important moving forward to have someone who looks like me in my age bracket, given the fact that I've had kids in college, et cetera, there needs to be some additional thought to how we're compensated. Because my full-time salary, I'm blessed, my wife works. So even with 2 family incomes and 4 kids, there are sacrifices that need to be made every single day that I show up, every time I respond to an email or engage a resident in a city like Evanston. And I think we would all agree that our town is much different than our neighboring suburbs based on the engagement as well as the diversity of issues that we deal with, from whether it's preservation, parking issues, legal concerns within the city, or even violent crimes. We all have to deal with that as a council at one time or the other. So I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about it, and I think this is a really good conversation that we have, and I hope that the people who are thinking about running hear the content of what we're saying and not look for an opportunity to criticize. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Rainey.
Well, if we really wanted to be transparent, and Alderman Fisk, I am speaking to you pretty much directly, what we should do is we should take our benefit and our stipend in cash and then be permitted to buy the insurance from the city. And that would be $47,599 per person. And then you could feel pretty special. So we are really hiding what some are really receiving. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but the fact is our constituents really don't know that some are making so much more than others. So the real fair thing to do, which I'm not advocating, I'm just saying it's the fair thing to do, is for all of us to be making being a salary of $47,500 a year, and let it go at that. You can buy your family coverage with that exactly as you have now. And those of us who don't have family coverage, we just buy our single coverage. And those who don't want to buy any could give the rest to charity or whatever. But that's the way it would be most fair. Everybody right across the board get exactly the same amount. I am very serious when I say no matter how much public service or how much we don't want to be different than our city employees, the way we pay and compensate aldermen right now is not fair to single people, period.
Thank you, Alderman.
Mr. Mayor.
You want to chime in, Nick? I got Alderman Fisk that wants to say something, and then let me go to you. Okay?
Can I just quickly say that's not what I was saying, Alderman Rainey. That's all.
No, but I just wanted you to know that.
Okay. All right. Nick, go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, 3 things. First, in terms of process, the ordinance requires and the city council rules require that the compensation committee provide a report and recommendation 240 days before the election. That is next Monday. So there is not really time to sort of send this back. And it's up to the council at this point either to adopt or reject the recommendation in the compensation committee. according to the city council's rules and the ordinance.
Can I stop you right there for a second, Nick? Though my understanding is this did become that report did go to city council, and the council accepted it and then referred it to rules committee for us to have this kind of conversation and figure out. Kimberly, is that not correct?
That is correct, Mayor. So the compensation committee the compensation committee has now been dissolved, and their report has been accepted by the city council for that action at city council.
And so it's really now up to the city council. What I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is that it's up to the city council to adopt an ordinance, either to accept their recommendation or to do something else.
But we don't have to do that in the next week, do we?
No, but their report had to be done by next Monday. But as far as next steps, I don't think there's any sort of, it's up to the council to reconfigure anything at this point. It's not really up to, as Kimberly pointed out, the compensation committee is dissolved. So I just wanted to address that point. The second thing is what Alderman Rainey raises is something that we as the law department would definitely have to research and see if it would create a problem with respect to how we compensate everyone as far as the city is concerned. So that is something that the law department has to look at. And thirdly, there was some discussion that came up that was sort of off topic, but I figured it was appropriate to sort of remind the council of it. Some of the issues that Alderman Simmons raises to change are actually rules for the city council. So I believe it's Rule 27 that sets out the number of postcards. It's 2 a year. It's 28, I believe, sets out the technology allowance. So those are things that I believe this committee would need to address at probably a different meeting once it's on the agenda, but those are already in the rules for the rules committee.
Point of information for Nick. Nick, we provide, I don't know what it's called, incentive to employees who don't take any insurance. How much is that, and why would that not be similar to just not taking any family insurance?
So I can speak to that, Mayor.
Provision.
Oh, I can speak to that, Nick. It's $150 that they're given, and it's once a month.
How often do they get that?
It's once a month.
Once a month.
And the 150 is for employees who do not accept any insurance, so they're not taking insurance from the city at all.
Right. So I'm thinking that this is more or less a modification of that. In fact, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So if we can give employees $150 a month for not taking any insurance, we can certainly give a city council member who may or may not be elected in next spring $150 a month or whatever for not taking the additional $17,000 a year insurance. Seems to me very comparable.
And just to make a point of reference, the city council does receive stipends that the city staff do not receive, such as the technology stipend that goes to all city council members. So if there's a stipend that we want to investigate more, that we should look into.
But what about your car allowances?
So car allowances. So the stipend for car allowances for city staff is for certain staff. It doesn't go to all city staff members. And that could be something that can be discussed as well.
Sure. I don't want a car allowance. I just want to have some equality in the insurance benefit. But those are stipends.
Cicely, you got last comment. Then
I'm sorry. I just need to clarify that point because I thought, Ms. Richardson, that some of our staff did get a cell phone allowance. Is that no longer?
So they get a cell phone allowance, but they don't get a technology allowance, which is different.
Okay.
So your technology.
I get that. So we get, I didn't realize it was different than that. So I was just saying, and again, being that some of us are doing this for the money. So I have to keep saying that because I'm sure in Evanston now, he's going to say we were trying to,
nickel and dime.
But we get a $75, I believe.
Correct.
Technology thing, right? So we don't have an office. So the majority of us are working at home, probably under our internet that we already would have because we're living in 2020. And then we're paying for our telephones that we may or may, I have 2 phones. I have my city phone and right. So my $75 allowance, granted, I'm not saying it's not good, doesn't probably cover my cell phone and my technology that I'm using at home. So I'm just pointing that out for a point of reference. So we have city staff who get a car allowance and a cell phone allowance. And then I didn't know about the $150 allowance people are getting as an incentive for not taking insurance. So I'm assuming on council, if you don't take insurance, do you get the $150 allowance as well?
No.
Okay. So just to make sure we're giving a fair picture to the public, again, public service, we're not doing this for the money, but there are things that the staff do get the council don't get. And I guess you were saying vice versa in our technology allowance, but we would all say that that probably is not covering the time and effort that we are putting into this position. And so your car allowance is someone that can get, they're driving all around town and doing city work. Meanwhile, we're putting our own gas in our cars, we're paying for our own coffee, we're paying for our own parking to do work in which our citizen base is looking for us to do. So I just want to be really fair in that we're giving an accurate picture, to not say that we're trying to get more that our staff get, but there are different benefits for different duties and positions in the city of Evans. That was just the point of clarification I wanted to make sure people understood.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Fleming. Okay, so to sum all this up, we are not going to move forward. The council, the general consensus on the council is not to move forward with the recommendations of the compensation committee that was issued in the report, to at a minimum keep it as is, but to explore some sort of stipend to create greater equality between those that are taking family health plans and those that aren't. My suggestion, because all of this factors into the budget, that we have this, Kimberly, brought up during the budget conversations in the council.
So, yeah, I was going to recommend it come back to rules, because typically this is something that out of rules and ordinance have to be created. And so my question is, it seems like there's still work to be done. And do you want this to come back to rules before it goes to the budget?
I don't know. I mean, I think either way we're going to have a conversation about it. So I guess my thought was bring it to council with a memo that says, you know, here's the resolution as is, and if you want to put an amendment to it, to put some sort of stipend onto it, the council can then put the amendment that evening onto it and have that discussion there.
Let's bring it back to rules. I think it just...
No, we might miss the deadline. I think we're going to miss the legislative deadline. That's what I think we're going to miss.
I think we've already hit the legislative deadline.
And I think what the compensation committee did might be what we have to stick with. So I don't want that to happen.
So to Alderman Rainey's point, Mr. Mayor, the only deadline is for the compensation committee to provide the report to the city council. And then it's up to the city council to either adopt it or reject it. And so there is no deadline in terms of when to pass that ordinance, according to the city council rules and according to the city ordinance.
Okay, fine. So let's take it to council, then we can act on recommendations, and then we can go ahead and come up with our own ordinance later.
I agree.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Thank you, everybody, for that robust conversation. We're now going to move to item, and this is for discussion, R3. Alderman Rainey, could you introduce that one?
R3, yes. Item R3, in-person city council meetings. Our staff is looking for direction from the council in regards to continuing virtually meetings, move to an in-person or hybrid meeting model through the end of this year. This is for discussion.
A second?
Second.
All right, so this is up for conversation, and the question on the floor is whether to continue virtual only meetings as we're having due to the pandemic, whether to move these indoors back to the council chambers or some other location, and make sure though that we're complying with all the public health directives in terms of the number of people that can be admitted and all of that, or some sort of hybrid model. I'm not quite sure what that would look like, but some sort of hybrid model. Alderman Nguyen, and then Alderman Wilson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think that given this recent uptick or surge, if we want to call it that, in coronavirus cases, that we should continue to meet virtually. I think trying to come up with, well, first in person, entirely in person, I think is really adding a burden to the staff. I think it just it really disadvantages anybody to come in person who has health concerns. And I don't know what a hybrid model would be, but once again, we're adding extra work to the city staff. I don't think any of us want to continue meeting like this indefinitely, but I think the public has gotten adjusted to this. I think one advantage is we have more city staff that can participate and provide us extra information because they don't have to come to the Civic Center for maybe, for an item that only might last 30 minutes. So I think given the uncertainty with where the coronavirus is taking us, that we should continue what we're doing until we really get more of an all clear.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Wilson?
Yeah, and, unless we could have some sort of outdoor meetings, which we can't realistically do, I agree with Alderman Nguyen. I just think that we have to prioritize the collective and community safety and not put that at risk. So that's how I feel about it.
All right, thank you. Alderman Braithwaite?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely agree with my peers. I think this is a great conversation to have right now, just as a checkpoint. But I agree. I think for the safety of ourselves, our staff, and any of the public that would feel the need to attend, I think this is the best course of action until we get a green light to do otherwise. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Alderman Columbia?
Yeah, just for clarity for people who are, at home are going to catch the news of this, can we just have city staff or an attorney tell us where we are in terms of the governor's order? Because I think there's been some questions around what other communities are doing. So if we decide to stay virtual, I think people might be confused if other communities are not virtual. So it might be worth just stating publicly what the governor's orders require.
Yeah, so in preparing for tonight's meeting, looking at other municipalities, a number of municipalities who don't have the technology have been doing the hybrid model, which is those who can attend in person, they will accommodate, and then those who can do virtual, they'll accommodate as well, to allow for there to be a person at the facility for them to be able to attend. The issue that my colleagues have mentioned to that has been there's a technology delay. And so for those who are in person, they're getting, real time. However, those who are listening or participating virtually are not. And so that issue comes disjointed at times in the discussion. And so for people watching from home, it becomes very difficult to follow at times. As to the governor's, this was an amendment as stated in the memorandum. There was an amendment to the Open Meetings Act that has allowed for this to continue under the governor's emergency declaration of an emergency, or the health director of the state of Illinois. What it does state in that, we have to ensure that that an individual like myself is at this location of the meeting, which I'm currently at, but also if deemed not habitable due to whatever concerns, like the Civic Center, we can go virtual without having to have a staff person here or individual of the corporate council at the Civic Center. So right now, we are recording our meetings. We record our meetings. We're continuing to take roll call as required, and we are also required if someone wants a copy of those meetings, regardless if they're city council or other boards and commissions, they are able to request a copy of the meetings. So we have decided to post all meetings online that are occurring so that people are able to view them if they weren't able to attend the meeting virtually.
Okay, so I personally like the in-person meeting much better. I think Alderman Nguyen said that as well. But I see the benefits and pros and cons of each, right? So online, our staff can come and I think more people probably can participate because they're not trying to make the drive and so on and so forth. However, we still do have people in the community who don't have technology, can't access technology that well. And so we might be missing them in person. So I think it's a little bit of both. I do think for the overall safety of everyone, probably the virtual is better. And I haven't researched this, but maybe we can just think through how we might make sure we're reaching people who can't, navigate Zoom and I haven't heard from people, but I assume that they're out there. And, I know we always had kind of some older folks who were in the audience every week, no matter what the topic is. And I don't know if they're still participating online or if they've had difficulty. So just for us to be mindful, of that, as staff is working through things, just as Clerk Reed had brought forward before, people, when we were meeting in person, who couldn't make it out to the meeting for a variety of reasons and wanted to call in their comments, just to make sure people, understand this process we're under and how they can still participate, even if they don't have the technology capability. So whether they're calling or emailing or however, we can take those comments so that their comments are heard and in the record if they care for that.
Thank you, Alderman. All right, seeing no more hands raised or anything, it seems like there's general consensus for the time being to continue to hold these meetings and other committee meetings on a virtual basis due to the pandemic. All right, Alderman Rainey, can you move for discussion R4?
Should we take a vote on that?
We don't have, was just for discussion. So staff just wanted some direction. So.
Okay. R4, Mr. Mayor would like a discussion on missing executive session, audio recordings and written minutes. This is for discussion. I move approval.
Second.
All right. So this is open for discussion. It's pretty straightforward. The council's already aware of this because we've talked about this in executive session before, but there seem to be 12 executive session meetings that we've had where no audio recordings or written minutes have been brought forward by the clerk. For those, I've been trying to track those down and have been unsuccessful at that. So now we have Clerk Reed here. Maybe if you want to talk, you're welcome to talk on this topic.
I'll give an alderman the chance to respond first, but yeah, I do have some comments to make here.
I guess I'd be interested in the comments, Clerk, and then with the follow-up question, just so we don't get into the back and forth, just when will they be completed?
Yeah, okay, well then I will start here and go through this. So, I did receive an email from you, Steve, about this being on the agenda on Saturday. And so in your memo, you state that there are 12 sets of recordings and minutes that are missing, some going back to 2018. And that is true, or that is not exactly the case. Here's what I can go through. So in the letter to the Attorney General's office, you list what those minutes that are missing, the audio is missing. So in the 5/29/18 sets of minutes and the 5/17/18 sets of minutes, those are minutes that were submitted to the council. Those minutes were submitted, and as well as a whole host of other minutes, the council rejected those minutes because they were nearly verbatim minutes. They were verbatim records of what was done during the executive session. And that was something, so I'm actually really happy that you brought this discussion forward publicly, Mayor Haggerty. This discussion and similar discussion is something that I've been calling for quite some time.
Can I just ask you, why haven't you responded to any of my requests for this information, Clerk Reed?
Yeah, so
requesting this for months.
Yeah. To that point, I did respond. In fact, there's an email chain that you did not include that was just from Friday, July 24th, in which Alderman Wilson, when I released the police misconduct memo, police misconduct and use of force memo, Alderman Wilson's response to that was that, you remind me of these various issues that have, little to nothing to do with the memo. But what he did say is, you remind me that we're still waiting dozens of minutes in executive session minutes Will we ever get them? If not, just say so. Some are over a year old. I will read the full email. In addition, you have repeatedly promised me that there would be a list of records that you have scanned by your office. Where are those records stored? There's a lot of material in that office. There was a lot of material in that office when you assumed the position, and we, or at least I, do not know where those records are because you have not told me. You indicated to me that you would give old original documents to the History Center, but they do not have a record of such. Where are the old originals? The archived ordinances are important for things like analysis for the reparations program. Also, we do not have answers to what happened to the laptop from your office that is missing and whether executive session records or voter information you had compiled for your text and phone campaigns were on that laptop. And I did respond to Alderman Wilson. First, his comments had nothing to do with the policy, but I did respond to his questions. And I said there are not dozens of minutes missing. Here's a link to the public webpage. There are a few executive session minutes outstanding due to possible corrupted audio files. You can expect the minutes from the few sessions with corrupt audio at the next upcoming exec session. You were CC'd and you were copied on that email, Mayor Haggerty. So I saw that, Clerk Reed. Right. But I got 12 executive session recordings and minutes missing. I have been asking for these for forever. You are citing some email in response to Don Wilson, and you've never responded to my request or the council's request for this. Yes. Well, I don't understand. This is your job. Right. I understand. That is my job. And I respond. And I take my job extremely seriously. I take my job extremely seriously. As I was pointing, you state that there are 12 minutes and recordings that are missing. There are not 12 missing recordings. Let's just be clear. I've asked you repeatedly in these emails. I would like to respond. I've asked you repeatedly in these emails if I'm mistaken, if I have made a mistake in my emails. I am frustrated. I think everybody understands that. I am frustrated because I'm spending so much time tracking down minutes. That's your job. And you don't do the minutes right after executive session. We don't get them the next week. And now you're just using a bunch of words, and I just want the recordings and the minutes for these. Right. And I'm not using a bunch of words. I'm using facts. Well, why didn't you respond to me with facts up until this point? Mayor Haggerty, you never have. I don't want to go back and forth. I do just want to be able to respond. You never go back and forth, Devon. It's a one-way communication with these emails from me to you. Right. So as I said, I don't want to go back and forth, Mayor Haggerty, but what I do want to state is that I acknowledge there are 5 executive session recordings where the audio file is corrupted. I acknowledge that to you and Alderman Wilson in an email on the 4th. Which ones are those? Those are the executive session minutes or executive sessions from September 9th, 2018 to October 14th, 2019. So it's about a month period. We were meeting for executive session every week at that point. The audio files there corrupted. What I would hope is that, I met with Luke Stowe in the IT department. I would hope that there'd be an effort to see if there's a way to recover those potentially corrupted audio files. But I do want to set the record straight that of the 12 minutes that you have listed that are missing, there's only 5 that have a missing audio file or potential corrupted audio file. As I said, a number of those minutes were presented to the council. The council rejected them because the council saw them as too detailed. They're for nearly verbatim minutes. There are another set of minutes that were, those were meetings that I was not present for, that I, in fact, was not allowed to be in executive session because those issues dealt directly with matters relating to me. Those aren't listed. 4/29/19 and 8/5/19 are executive sessions that I was not present at, so those are. So help me understand. So September 9th, 2019, we have an executive session. Mm-hmm. You don't do the minutes within the week after the executive session. We come back, we have another executive session, September 16th, 2019. Again, you don't do the minutes, within a week after that. Then we have the September 23rd, same thing. Then we have September 30th, same thing. Then we have October 14th, same thing. And then at some other point in the future, you find out that
the audio was corrupted for all of those executive
Those 5 sessions that occurred over that month period, yes.
Why didn't you discover that right after? I could understand that I agree that could happen, I suppose. Why didn't you discover that after the September 9th minutes that you recorded?
You know, I did not discover that. If you recall the timeline there, September 9th, 2019, right before that, you issued an order that really disrupted the flow and organization of the office, where I was no longer able to have direct communication with the deputy clerk. But also, I'll just note that hold on, Mayor Haggerty, just 1 second. I also want to note that it is standard practice here. Can we say that there are executive session minutes that I have not been party to, that other staff have been responsible for, that are still outstanding? Maybe a month or 2 down the road, has that happened in the past? I mean, the record will show. And so, it hasn't been standard practice that, even before I came in, that the week after that executive session minutes are approved. It was a fairly busy period. The office was going through a lot of changes. And so it was about a month period. It was 4 meetings in a row, or I'm sorry, 5 meetings in a row, where the session was recorded. Somehow the audio file became corrupted. And then the rest of them, as I said, are accounted for either as being rejected by the council because of the verbatim nature of those minutes, or they have been drafted by other staff members and they're just waiting to be approved.
I find
Clerk Reed, do you mind, Mayor?
I just find this unacceptable that you've taken me to this point where I had to bring all this public to now sit here and say, here's what happened to them, and not having told me this before. You never responded to those emails and said, here's the situation with all of these, all 12 of these. I'm still not sure. I mean, I guess you're saying September 9th through October 14th are corrupted. But I'm just exhausted by trying to track these down. So I don't know if my colleagues have concerns about this or not.
I guess if I could just jump in and with all due respect, thank you, clerk, for your response. It sounds like you have plenty of updates to share. And just in interest of time, because we've going beyond and we have some lengthy conversations that are very important, as well as this discussion at Human Services. Clerk Reed, can you just give us a summary of your action plan? Because I've heard bits and pieces of it in your response of how we get up to speed with the minutes that need to be revised, as well as the action plan to get the minutes that are outstanding submitted, sir.
Yes. Thank you for that question. That is a productive question. So as far as the minutes that with the corrupted audio file, I hope that we can, if there's the potential for an outside audio expert to come in and take a peek at this and see if there's anything that they can do, I think that would be a productive solution. Those minutes can still be drafted the way that we're drafting executive session minutes. Now, the direction that I've received and agreed to from council is to not do very detailed verbatim minutes and to do very, essentially sparse minutes. And so those minutes can be, the hold off for those audio files was in the hopes that we could come to a solution. As I mentioned in the email, As I mentioned in the email, July 24th, when I released the police misconduct and use of force memo to everyone in response to Alderman Wilson, I did state there that those few audio recordings that were corrupted, that the minutes for those would be put forth at the next executive session. So that's still the timeline. That's the timeline that the mayor was aware of prior to putting out this memo. I'm sure the mayor is aware that I had conversations with Luke Stowe regarding this. And that I recently responded to Alderman Wilson's. So I thank you for your questions, Alderman Braithwaite, and I do think.
Can I follow up with one?
I copied all these people. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Just one more question. Thank you, sir. So, Clerk Reed, and then from your position, in the event that the minutes have not been accepted, voted on, et cetera, before our term, do we have any consequences to us as a city council for not having the minutes properly submitted, voted on, blah, 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 in the event that we run out of time?
Well, I don't suspect that's not going to be an issue that we run out of time. We have, 9 months before our term is over, and it won't be 8 or 9 months before this is settled.
Okay, thank you. I'm finished with my questions.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Alderman Fleming.
I just have more of a general statement. So I'm no IT expert, so whatever Clerk Reed, if Luke Stowe obviously is our kind of IT person here, but if he is unable, then I would hope that you could take whatever device to whatever place and, get it looked at, as we're doing the, COVID and COVID recovery. I imagine all of our staff are kind of pushed to the limit and maybe this isn't their expertise. So if you could take the initiative to take it wherever it needs to go to see if it's able to be fixed, that would be great, and not necessarily waiting on our staff who might not be able to do it or don't have time. And then my other point is, I think what this is displaying, and people maybe are seeing this more nationally as well, is we have to just have some better communication. So you as Alderman Fisk said earlier, make a living wage, you were elected to do this job. And, I don't want to or have time to, and neither do my colleagues, I think, manage, right? So the minutes come, they're there. I think that, at least for me, I'm not trying to be a stickler. I understand life happens, so maybe you don't get them to us the next meeting. My memory is not very good, so I can't always necessarily, if they're really late, say how accurate things are. So I'm really relying on you and relying on you to keep those records for public to keep us accountable as well. And then I would just speak in terms to what you're speaking to about the executive sessions verbatim. I was there for the conversation. I will tell you, I don't personally care if they're verbatim or not, as long as they're correct. But that is the direction, and I think that was kind of the overwhelming direction. Then I would have an expectation if you did have the minutes and they were verbatim and you need to just condense them to whatever format's acceptable, that should be done in a relatively quick time, right? So we can just kind of keep moving on. In terms of your point regarding another staff member, I know we've had other staff in executive session, and again, I'm not really remembering those dates and who was due for whatever minute. So if you and Ms. Richardson, I think, was in some of those meetings, or whoever it is, could just sit down and figure out what's missing and the timeline for that. I think that would be helpful for all people, because we don't know what the next council is going to look like, but we don't want to leave them in any limbo with the IG or whoever's in charge of these things, right? We don't want to leave anything undone for them, whether it's because of audio files or, whatever the issues are, right? We have to be good stewards with the government resources. So we want to make sure we do leave that in good standing for everyone. And we also just don't know what the future holds in terms of our meetings. If we're going to be back in the COVID lockdown and all kind of things, I think it's a good time to get all these things so we can hand all the information off to a new council in a very productive manner, so that they are not trying to figure out. And I think we had this discussion in executive session with some notes from when some of us weren't on council, right? Trying to decipher some things from Mr. Green's notes. So we don't want to leave that for a guessing game for the next council to have to deal with.
Thank you. If I can just briefly, before we close this out, respond to Alderman Fleming. I would like to take the audio files to an outside expert. As we know, the Open Meetings Act states that the verbatim recordings shall not be removed from the official storage site. Right now, the council is not designated an official storage site for the executive session minutes. And as the records keeper, it's just currently, the city network, as well as, a city issued device, which is connected to the network. So if the council is, I think this is something that could be discussed at the next executive session. But if the council is willing to give direction to allow for those recordings to be sent to an outside expert, that would be appreciated. And I just want to note that, as I said, we have met with Luke Stowe. I believe that this is something outside of Luke's expertise, but there are folks out there who are experts, so this can maybe get some more guidance on this. So thank you.
Alderman Wilson.
Thanks. And I guess if you could just start as far as the IT part goes, maybe just get them to the files to the IT department if they haven't been. If they have, then we can check in with them. But also with regard to the recordings that you do have, you have the secure Google Drive that you upload the other minutes meeting recordings to. You just make sure all those other recordings get uploaded to that so that we can get to those. That's the only way we can check the minutes that are produced versus the recordings. Since they're old, as Alderman Fleming said, it's hard to go back and remember all of that. So we need those recordings to actually do our part of the job. Okay.
And so when can those recordings be uploaded?
From my knowledge, other than the recordings that are that have the corrupted audio file, there are no missing recordings. There's a file, is a Google Drive file, as Alderman Wilson mentioned. I can connect with Ms. Richardson and the deputy clerk to make sure that everything is in one place. There's some
I'm going to be pretty upset. I'm going to be pretty. I'm sorry, Dylan. I'm going to be pretty upset with staff if there's an audio recording for all of those, because that's why all those people were copied on that email exchange, because they kept saying there is no audio recording for all 12 of those. And you're saying right here that no, all 12 of those.
There are 5 that are missing.
I understand there's 5 that are missing, but you're saying the other 7 are uploaded. All the audio recording is uploaded in there.
Yes, the other ones are uploaded somewhere. They're on my city device, as you mentioned in your memo that staff went through. My city device access to, and so yeah, all of this. I've met with Luke Stowe and the IT department. Any of the records, any of the recordings that are not corrupted or whatever the case may be, have been uploaded and turned over.
Uploaded to
on a city device.
Okay, to the Google Drive, because there's the Google Drive. There's a set Google Drive, right? Executive session folder. We're all talking about the same thing.
I believe there are 2 Google Drives. The deputy clerk, as you can see, maintains those Google Drives. So what I'm saying is the files are on the city network, and if there's any recording that you want access to, you can either find it on the Google Drive or request it. The recordings there are some recordings that are not on there. There's executive session recordings from the last 2 meetings, which, as the mayor mentioned in his memo, have been kept by the city manager. The recording was taken by the city manager's office, and no, those are not uploaded there. In fact, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the 2019, 2018 stuff. So that's one. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is Luke or Kimberly on this line? Can you confirm what the clerk's saying? He's saying those 7 of the 12 that are reported missing, 5 indeed are because the audio is corrupted, but the other 7 are all uploaded. Is Kimberly or Luke on the line?
Mayor, I know that looking at the time, I don't. So I will just say this: I will work with the clerk to identify where those items are stored, because at this time, Deputy Clerk Gomez is not. Eddie does not have access to those files. So I will work with the clerk, and we will identify where they're located at.
I would like all 7 of those uploaded onto whatever this server is or this file is, no later than, is it fair to say no later than close of business Thursday?
Okay. I will work with the clerk.
We should be able to do that even before then if they're not already there. How about close of business Wednesday, 2 days from now?
We will work with the clerk to make sure whatever those are, we'll have them uploaded to that Google Drive.
I am very frustrated. I'm so frustrated that I literally have had to spend months tracking these, asking all these questions, sending emails to Clerk Reed, getting no response. Talk about being disrespected. Alderman Fisk.
Is Nick still here? Is there someone?
Nick's here.
Yes, Alderman.
I'm really curious as to what our legal responsibility is, either as a council or the clerk's office, and what timelines we're expected to meet in terms of getting minutes done and available.
So the Open Meetings Act sets the timeline in terms of when the council is supposed to have an opportunity to review and release executive session minutes. Mm-hmm. And the clerk, according to city ordinance, is the keeper of those minutes. The consequence is not necessarily to the individual council members or the mayor or to the clerk. It's actually it falls on the city. So if the attorney general decides to file an action, or one of the diligent residents of the city of Evanston demands and asks for these minutes, the city could face civil consequences for failing to abide by the Open Meetings Act and not having those minutes.
What kind of civil consequences?
I mean, it would be money. I'm not exactly sure to what extent the fine would be, but it would be money damages for failing to abide by the Open Meetings Act.
Excuse me, if I might chime in to that, the Open Meetings Act, the requirement is that any executive session minutes, according to OMA, will be approved within 30 days of the council meeting. I believe that Nick can confirm, but it's 30 days. So that is one requirement. Also, this notion that any of this could be, accessed through FOIA, I can tell you, as much as I would love for everything to be accessible through FOIA, these executive session recordings are not something that anyone could ever have access to. The verbatim recording is explicitly in OMA and FOIA exempt from disclosure. So no resident could ever request this. And as far as the requirements of the council, what is mentioned is and what's really key to transparency is that the council is supposed to meet 2 times a year to release executive session minutes. This is also a discussion that I've been calling for. And in the last 4 years, this council has not met 2 times a year to release past executive session minutes to the public. And so if we're creating liability, I think the liability is created by not releasing these executive session minutes, some of them going back to 2014, 2013, that have not been released by the council in accordance with the biannual requirements of OMA. And also minutes aren't
to clarify
until the council has done those biannual meetings. Mr. Collins.
I appreciate the clerk's encyclopedic knowledge about the Open Meetings Act. He is absolutely correct in the sense that the council is to meet twice a year to review these executive session minutes. And that is the actual issue that we're discussing here is the minutes, not necessarily the audio recordings. The executive session minutes do have to be reviewed at least twice a year. And I believe the fine is can be $1,000 per day for the city if we have a violation of the Open Meetings Act. We also have to file the Local Records Act. So both of those together could create some potential civil liability with the Attorney General's office for the city.
Right, including the council's not reviewing these biannually to release publicly. That could create liability with the AG.
Well, they can't review them if
we don't have them.
Never mind.
Have to have them to review.
You have them. They go back to 2014 that there's some not released. There are 5, as I said, recordings. So I think we should talk about the full picture here, especially as we're using transparency and FOIA.
Let's not get off topic from the 12 that are missing right now. That we gotta get those. Alderman Fisk, and then Alderman.
What I really want to know is what's our liability associated with those that are missing, and what sort of day-to-day fines are we exposed to? I think that's something that I have never really realized, and I would like to have those numbers. Nick, is that something that you could come up with?
Yes, I can get you a final tally of what our exposure could be, but it's up to $5,000 and $1,000 per day.
Okay.
Is what the statutory fine is.
All right, Alderman Fisk. Alderman Nguyen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to set a deadline, City Clerk, for you said there were those particular minutes that we rejected because they were verbatim, and we had sent them back to your office. I believe those are from last fall. Can we get a deadline set for those to be converted to the standard minutes that we've been having? Because I don't see that we turned them back to you to change into a different format, which actually was a reduced format. And so I'd like to at least get that off the list, so that's completed.
Certainly, those. If I could,
that you could do 2 weeks. Is that? Why don't we set 2 weeks?
Certainly, yeah. I have no problem with that. I have wanted this. We started doing verbatim executive session minutes. In 2018, maybe. I do have a question for Attorney Cummings.
No, actually, I'm not done yet, though.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll help me answer your question as far as the timeline.
So August,
but certainly within 2 weeks. Yes, yes,
so
within 2 weeks.
So and how many minutes? Those were 4 sets.
That need to be reduced down.
Yes.
Several sets. Yes.
No, I think it was 4. That's what you said.
No, they're the 2 that are missing from 2000 that are claimed to be missing from 2018. Those are the minutes that need to be that were rejected and need to be reduced down.
So only 2 sets of those.
Yes, 2 sets of those.
Okay, so then we can expect those August 17th.
At the executive session if that's the next exec.
Well, let's do the next exec session because that's next Monday. It's a week from today, August.
All right.
Okay.
Let's set. Okay.
Yes,
so
for those 2 that need to be reduced down. But if I can ask a question of Mr. Attorney Cummings, is that fine?
Sure. Go ahead.
Cummings, from your knowledge, or Ms. Gandersky, either one who has a knowledge of this, the Open Meetings Act is somewhat unclear, as it says that the council is to approve executive session minutes, but the clerk is to draft them. And when there's a difference in opinion, when the clerk puts forward minutes that are, that are more detailed than the council is comfortable with, how do we make that determination as to, what minutes to go with? If I've submitted minutes that are, legally sufficient, but they're more detailed than the council wants, how do we reconcile that?
We don't approve them.
I think that's a question for the public access counselor.
Okay. So, because I don't want to, go back and forth more on this, I will agree. We have approved some minutes that were, the council has approved a few minutes that were, nearly that were the verbatim version of the executive session minutes to make sure that folks in the public have a clear understanding of what's going on in exec. I will agree here to pare down those executive session minutes. This is a discussion I've been calling for a while, and so I'm happy that we are having.
I just have a question for the council and for Mr. Mayor. I guess we're discussing the 2 executive session minutes that are asking to be pared down. I'm assuming then there's some inconsistency between the way the minutes were kept previously and the way the minutes were kept subsequent.
I could respond to that, Clerk Reed. I would agree this is a very healthy conversation to have, and I appreciate you putting forth the deadlines and the clarity where we've had bad communication. If I could speak for the council with the details in those minutes, I'll use myself as an example. I won't speak for the council. The concern is we don't necessarily, to the public, vote on things in executive session. We talk about litigation, real estate sometimes, and there's one other thing that's not coming to mind. But the point is, when the minutes capture a phrase or a statement that is not reflective of my comments, for example, I would then ask if it isn't pertaining to the subject matter that those comments be eliminated. And I think these are some of the conversations that I recall when we were looking at such, detailed minutes. So definitely we look at what's on the agenda. Everything is very bullet pointed. We all realize at some point that the recordings are released for anyone who cares to go into that level of detail. But the point that I would want to communicate to you is I'm just more concerned with capturing the minutes in the format that we're used to, just to allow us to move forward in this conversation and also this matter, Clerk Reed.
Certainly.
Alderman Wayne, I'm sorry.
Yes, I have one last thing, because having served on the council during that time period from 2014 to that the Clerk Reed is referring to, we did have regular 6-month reviews of our executive session minutes, and we released the minutes that we felt were appropriate to be released. To imply that we have not released all of them and therefore have been in violation of the law is really incorrect. And I don't want to get into a debate about this. I'm sure that the legal counsel can determine that we did, because I remember reviewing those minutes every 6 months as we are required to do. And not all of those minutes were released because some of them were ongoing matters. And so they were still appropriate to keep within the executive session. So we do release executive session minutes when the matters are no longer relevant, when we are no longer engaged in litigation or discussing. So that is really accurate to say that we did not do that on a regular basis. We did do it on a regular basis, and we had a city clerk who brought them to us with our law department on a regular basis. So I want to make sure that that record is very clear. And I look forward to getting these 2 sets of verbatim minutes in standard form and seeing them at the next session, which is next Monday, August 10th.
Certainly. I do just want to note that I did not make a comment on what the previous council did. My comments were regarding this council that I've been a part of in the last 4 years that I've been here, 3 years going on 4 years. We have not had that biannual review. And I can't say what was going on before because I wasn't in exec, but we certainly haven't had it.
All right. I think now we just need to move on at this. Let's start getting stuff off our list and make sure that we're complying correctly. And I think we have to start setting deadlines that are met, because we are facing liability if we do not get these things completed.
Thank you, Alderman. All right, so the 2018 audio and minutes we'll have for executive session next Monday, August 10th, for the clerk. The 5 that are there's a problem with the audio and you can't access the audio, have to get with Luke to answer those. And then the other 5 that the clerk says do exist and are up on the drive, we're going to have the clerk get together with Luke Stowe and Kimberly Richardson this week, and then I want to report back by the end of the week about those. All right, that takes care of that discussion item. Next item up is any new business? Any new business? All right, hearing and seeing no new business. Any items for communication? All right, hearing no items for communication. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The Rules Committee meeting is adjourned. Next up will be the Human Services Committee. Thank you, everyone.